Hi guys, today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about how to build and play Honkai Star Rail's one and only currently limited character, Seele, whatever, choose. You could choose however you want to pronounce her name. I'll break down each section, what she needs, what I need, the value in certain Eidolons from my experience, and the assumed best sets and combos for gearing Star Rail's best DPS as of now. Before we start, I'd like to point out a few strengths and overall guidelines for what I think Seele excels and does not excel in. To state the obvious first, Seele is a high damage carry who absolutely shreds quantum enemies while being able to constantly cycle herself into extra turns, high damage, and huge burst windows. This ability, paired with the fact that she can do it all herself without any real need for supporting DPS, supports themselves, or knights, really does make her a great candidate for investment right now. In terms of weaknesses, however, she is of course a 5-star limited that you would have to pull before the 17th of May, and she doesn't have the same level of DPS or pizzazz when the enemy is tankier, so keep that in mind. However, that's not what we're here for. We're here for the guide. Let's get into it. For light cones, many of the 3-star artifacts are not bad nor great, but personally I believe that the 3-star light cone arrows is versatile just because it does not require specific conditions to receive its effects, where its alternatives provide bonuses to attacker speed after killing an enemy. Within the 4-star category, the cone with Don Heng's face, Only Silence Remains, feels the most usable given its outright bonus to attack and its provided bonus crit chance once enemies are eliminated off the field. To be clear, the other light cones within the 4-star category are not bad, but the conditions to activate their stats are either temporary, like river flows in spring, or simply do not outvalue the attack and crit chance that Only Silence Remains provides. Now, if you're like me and luck sacked some 5 stars, what options do you have? Well, between Seele's own artifact in the night, Sleep Like the Dead, and Cruising in the Stellar Sea all feel great because of the free crit chance or crit damage that they provide passively. Additionally, compared to the 3 or 4-star light cones, they have more attack since they are 5 stars, but that isn't to say that you need any of them to roll every enemy in sight. Now, that isn't to say that picking up Seele's light cone isn't valuable, since it is limited and we don't know when it will come back later, and it is really good for Seele herself. The benefit to picking up this limited light cone in terms of stats or gameplay is that it simply is head and shoulders above the rest. It provides the highest base crit rate of any light cone unconditionally, and the bonuses to basic attack skills and her ultimate, aka every single aspect of her kit, place Seele's light cone unsurprisingly as her best in class. Overall, however, I would say that the character pretty much kills any and every non-boss or elite monster for free in the early stages of Honkai Star Rail anyways, but you'll definitely feel the difference in damage and scaling of light cones once you start encountering the later simulated worlds or don't have a quantum disadvantageous enemy to be hitting. Overall, I would say that the character pretty much kills every non-boss or elite monster for free in the early stages of Honkai Star Rail anyways, but you will definitely feel the difference in damage and scaling of light cones once you start encountering the later simulated worlds or don't have a quantum weak enemy to be hitting. Moving along, we have a short section on traces. Now, I know this might be controversial, but trying to nitpick or min-max which traces you upgrade for Seele is pointless. Wait, before you get your pitchforks, wait a second, hear me out. If you are using Seele in Honkai Star Rail, you're probably using her as one of your primary damage dealers. Do you see the problem here? That's right, she's your bread and butter, your go-to DPS, and the only thing keeping your team afloat. So, recommending anything but a complete maxing of the Trace's skill tree simply doesn't make sense. You could argue that taking certain passive skills or stat bonuses would make more sense, since you are gaining more than a simple increase to skill damage, but in general, the order doesn't matter since everything needs to be leveled on a pure DPS. Now, regarding these choices, everything should be pretty self-explanatory since she is a DPS, but in case you were wondering, using a crit chance or crit damage chest depends on the ratio of crit chance to crit damage in your build, and using an attack percent over speed boot is primarily because you would rather have more impactful turns rather than more turns, especially when you have someone like Bronya on your team. In regard to her best set, Seele prefers Quantum when you're finally able to farm for it, but Musketeer or Cowboy set until then. Regarding the Planar Sphere and Link Rope, I've seen arguments for the critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and speed-based attack percent sets, but honestly, all of them kind of feel the same to me. The only difference I've noticed is I can sometimes guarantee a crit on turn 1, which is kind of funny if you use the crit damage relic. But in general, pick what you have, whatever rolls best for you, not that big a deal. Now, I know I'm about to get called a whale and that I shouldn't have an opinion on this next section, but just hear me out. Seele's first Eidolon feels great because it's just free crit chance after you hit an enemy a few times in battle. The second feels equally as good since you actually just stack the effect, not turn duration of the speed buff, which means more turns, more flags, more fun. And though the third and fifth Eidolons are simply increases the damage, the fourth Eidolon does feel like the last truly impactful Eidolon that you can feel throughout any point of the game. What about Eidolon 6? Yes, of course. The real question is, how good is Eidolon 6 Seele? Well, in the early game of honkaistarrail, there's one glaring problem with E6 Seele. The enemies die too fast. What am I referring to? Eidolon 6 Seele adds the ability for allies to deal additional damage on hit when attacking an enemy who has recently been targeted by Seele's ultimate ability. So the issue then is that most enemies don't even live to see the value of this Eidolon. But toward the mid game of honkaistarrail, any and all damage is valuable when you are desperate to meet a damage check or break a barrier before an enemy uses a skill. Though this is not mandatory by any means, you can definitely observe multiple procs of this skill throughout a fight, which of course generates higher damage and thus faster kills. I personally don't feel like Eidolons are necessary for Seele since she genuinely seems to overkill most of the time, which is funny from the guy who E6'd her. But it would be an obvious lie if I didn't say that the Eidolons do help damage checks, especially if you're fighting elite monsters or bosses. Since Seele's biggest weakness is tanks and unkillable meatballs, gaining any level of scaling to fight beefier enemies is invaluable. And last but not least, the team compositions to complement Seele. You can honestly run Seele with anyone since she herself complements most team compositions well, but there are a few teams that are very versatile if you are a Seele only enjoyer. The first team that I personally use all the time is Seele, Bronya, the Fire Trailblazer, and Bailu. Okay, get your whale, pay to win, free to play friendlies out of the way. With this team, I find that the shielding and provoking that the Trailblazer provides alongside Bailu allows a two-man army of Bronya and Seele to pretty much run over any enemies without fear of taking damage, dying, etc, etc. Bronya cleanses, gives damage buffs, and pushes up Seele constantly to pretty much make any team crumple if Seele hasn't already killed them by the end of the first turn. Additionally, in some simulated world fights, having Bronya, a healer reviver like Bailu, and the fire main character allows you to avoid certain mini-games with relative ease. For more free-to-play options, I suggest keeping the Fire Trailblazer because of his or her ridiculous versatility, but this time opting for March 7th. March 7th is great because she is a provoker, cleanser, and shielder, while Natasha, who I also recommend, is great for raw healing, among a few other supports that you can run in a free-to-play team. With that in mind, a team composition like Natasha, Seele, Fire Trailblazer, March 7th could work wonders against even the tankiest of compositions, with you changing certain aspects in and out for elements or certain boss fights. However, before I move on, I do have to talk about a key element about most free-to-play compositions. Within these teams, maintaining a balance of healing and tanking is usually key since you aren't able to kill enemies nearly as fast. Though that is the case most of the time, the inclusion of Seele makes faster team compositions possible. As a result, an alternative team composition when you want a faster team could be Pela, especially if she has resolution shines as Pearls of Sweat, Tingyun, Seele, and a flex last pick between the Fire Trailblazer and Natasha for healing. For all the team compositions listed, a combination of either safety and heals, shields, cleanses, and provokes, or a reduction in defense followed by offensive buffs to Seele so that she can clean up and quickly eliminate her enemies is present. But in general, so long as you have fun and think a bit creatively, Seele is versatile enough to fit into almost any team composition so long as you think hard enough. Anyways, that's going to be it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed this honkaistarrail, everything you could, would, should ever need to know about Seele video. I know I have mine at E6, S5, but that shouldn't stop you from appreciating just how crazy of a character is, even at one copy. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, turn the notification bell, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Adios.